A wonderful interview with Jack Gutman, the World War II veteran. You know what? He spent 66 years going through PTSD, and we've got Paula Shaw here to talk to us about PTSD with veterans. What are the symptoms? You know what? Whether you've been in combat or in a theater where there's a lot of stress, you want to see this segment because it'll make a difference in your life. But before that, I just want to send out a special shout out to the military. You know what? Whether it be the Civil War, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, the whole shot. If it wasn't for what you do, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And I very much appreciate, thank you for your service, because you know what, in so many other countries, you have rulers that have people under their thumb. People have to sneak out of those countries to go to another country. And you know, we don't have to do that here in the United States. And it's primarily due to the military, even though, you know, some people might not agree. You have the ability to disagree here. In other countries, you don't. So thank you so much for the military. I appreciate you being part of the show today. And again, we have Paula Shaw. Paula, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Always my pleasure to be here.
Now, we want to talk about PTSD with veterans. Now, my understanding is what's the acronym stand for again?
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, and it basically for the military, it's being in a combat unit and experience some serious trauma or extended period of trauma. Is that correct?
Yes. And it can be triggered by trauma, whether you've experienced it yourself or seen it. Like seeing horrific things, like my dad talked about, you know, when you're seeing somebody be blown up or you're seeing something destroyed, that, even though you may not be part of that experience, you may be at a safe distance, that is still traumatic. And just to give you an idea of how huge this problem is, out of the 1.64 million soldiers that were sent into Afghanistan and Iraq, 300,000 have PTSD. And that's just the ones that have reported it. A lot of people don't report it.
So one of the big things for people to understand is it just isn't them. They're not going crazy. There's a lot of other people out there that have that same condition.
Absolutely.
And there is help and there's things that they can do. You know what? You know, one of the big things that I like to understand is what are the symptoms? Because they manifest themselves in different ways in different people.
Yes.
So what are those?
Well, I can tell you some that I've experienced with my own clients who came back from combat. One of the first ones that shows up, and oftentimes it's the wife who calls me and says, he's angry all the time. I mean, he's literally kicking the dog. What are we going to do? So anger, rage, anxiety, fearfulness. Of course, you know, we've all heard about flashbacks. That's a tough one. Sleeplessness, depression. And this sense of isolation, because when you're in this place, you feel like, first of all, there's a lot of shame that goes with it, especially with men, because men think they should be able to come home and be guys again, right?
Put some dirt on it and move on.
Get over it, exactly. Just like your coach told you when you were a kid.
Yep.
But it's not that way. You know, this is a true trauma that impacted your brain and your psyche. And so it's not so easy to just get over it and move on in life. And people need to understand that. There's no shame in seeking help. In fact, it's pretty imperative that you do if you really want to heal in a productive way and not have it grow.
You know, one of the things that, you know, Jack said, he talked about the alcohol, how he wanted to, when as a comedian doing 3 shows, he would want to do 5 shows, so he didn't have to go to sleep as much, so he didn't have to deal with it as much. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't realize. It just can destroy or consume their lives, their marriage, their family, the whole shot.
Totally.
So,
it's avoidance. You know, all of that falls under the heading of avoidance, whether you're getting high or you're getting drunk or you're keeping busy, you know. People do that. It's interesting because, you know, I wrote that book on grief, and grief is a kind of PTSD in many ways, you know, and these same symptoms show up when people are grieving. They try to avoid the grief, so they keep busy, they work hard, they maybe do use drugs or alcohol or work, you know, workaholic type work. There's so many ways, but it's all about avoidance, the avoidance of pain, the avoidance of unpleasant experiences.
So once somebody says, okay, I've got this, what are the therapies that they need to, what are the, you know, what's the treatment like?
Well, one of the first things we really want is to get them to talk about what was the trauma. what was that horrific thing they can't get out, that picture they can't get out of their heads. And as awful as it sounds to talk about it, talking does help. There are also therapies in the field of energy psychology that I do a lot of work with, where we actually can calm a lot of those symptoms by tapping the same points they use in acupuncture. Amazing work is being done with that, and it's much more rapid. Individual therapy, group therapy can be really helpful because you don't feel so alone. You don't think, I'm the only one that can't figure it out, I'm the only one that can't get better. You know, that can be incredibly helpful.
Now, let me ask you this, where are the best places to go to get help?
Well, I think for veterans, start with the VA. It's affordable, if not free. They know this kind of thing inside and out. I mean, you know, PTA, there's so much help available. The therapists have very specific techniques for dealing with combat horrors and those kinds of things that have happened to military. There's also something I just actually learned about myself called MST, which is military sexual trauma. And that's for primarily women who have been raped or sexually abused by their brother soldiers. And they have specific treatment for that. The VA has really got a lot going on.
So they've got, that's great to know. That's
Yeah.
great to know. Paula, thank you again for shedding light on this serious issue. You know what, out of 1 million people, 30% of them or more are dealing with PTSD. So people just need to know they're not alone and there's a lot of help they can get.
Absolutely.
You know what, Paula, thanks again.
My
If
pleasure.
you would like to get more information on this, please go to the Silver Haired Tsunami website. If you would like Paula's book, hey, pain, when will this grief ever end? Grief, when will it ever end? Please
Grief,
go to...
when will this pain ever end?
Thanks, Paula. Hey, sometimes you get messed up.
Or this title.
You know what, next up,